and this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Please consult with a qualified financial professional for advice specific to your situation. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast producers or sponsors. We make no representations or warranties regarding the accuracy or completeness of the content. Hi, my name is Bella Carrasco, and helping others feel more comfortable about investing brings a huge smile to my face. After working in the private equity, family office, and securities markets for nearly a decade, I pulled together my resources to interview experts in each area of the due diligence process and answer how do you know questions when considering your future financial safety. We go deep into questions about many phases of the investment process, with the goal of helping you go from practice to game time confidently. This is the How Do You Know podcast. Neil is CEO and founder of Jaboy Productions, which focuses on producing conferences and networking events for RIAs, family offices, professional athletes, and high net worth investors. And there are many conferences, but Neil, I was drawn to Jaboy because you try to make them fun. You host conferences and events in multiple different countries and really want people to walk away with content and connections to help in many aspects of personal growth. So thank you for your time today. I want to get into why you started Jaboy later, but first want to tackle the topic of knowing what conference to attend, because in the investment world, you do want to put yourself out there and get exposure to different investment options, and going to conferences is one way to do that.
Absolutely. And there's a ton of conferences that pop up all the time. And I think that it's probably a difficult thing for those advisors out there to navigate which conference to attend because they look interesting, right? And it's just a matter of who's going to be there, who's producing the event, really what's the mission of the conference, I think is most important. And a lot of these conferences are different in the fact that they're produced by conference promoters. I think that the difference here is that I really started and I've always been in the financial services business. So being a Wall Street advisor my entire career, I built this conference model that we started over 7 years ago, specifically for my needs as an advisor to figure out, how could it be more productive for me? I kind of got tired of traveling to these various cities. Most of them were in U.S., Chicago, L.A., New York. I would go and I would, be in a conference or a meeting room for the whole day, eat the banquet food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, be with the same group, really not mixing it up. You almost had like assigned seats. And I was walking away saying to myself, well, I wasted, time traveling there and I wasted time in a room that I thought was going to be productive for my business. And I ended up wasting a lot of time. And I was like, how do you make it more effective? And again, thinking from an advisor perspective is how I came up with the idea for Jaboy Productions.
That's awesome and well needed, and I'm sure a lot will resonate with that. So, okay, I have a list of conferences that I think look good. The next step is probably to get on the phone with the conference host. So, what are some good questions to ask them to assess if it's a good fit for what someone is looking for?
Right. So to ask the attendees, typically, we ask attendees whether or not they come in from a registration on our website or they give us a call. We want to really know about their business. First of all, we have two sides of the business, right? We have the buy side and the sell side. The attendees, we first want to clarify that they really are buy side attendees. There's a lot of disparity out there where people that are trying to raise capital disguise themselves to come to conferences. And that's an ongoing problem. Not only is it a problem for the integrity of the conference, but also becomes that, you're wasting a conference provider's money. You are also taking time and space out of an opportunity for another attendee to be at that conference. What I mean is that there's a bunch of people that it seems like they make a business out of going to conferences. You know what I mean is that they go to every conference, everywhere there's a conference, and the purpose there is just either maybe to build their network and or just to post on their Instagram that they're, in a different city. That to me is a red flag. We look at people that are diamonds in the rough, that they're not really looking to go to a conference every day. They're
Mm-hmm.
looking for education. They're looking for opportunity for deal flow, for due diligence, and really to have something that's going to change their life. Because those types of people are going to inspire the other attendees in the room. It's great to create these friendships and these relationships, which was what we do. But it's not something that we try to do just to create events so that friends can come together. And if you understand the difference is a lot of conferences, all the friends call each other and they come together in New York or LA, and you see it all the time. And it becomes a job fair or an event just to basically catch up with your friends. So you got to think to yourself, is that really a productive platform? In the event that what we look at, we look at your purpose of, I think the most common or best thing that I look at is when somebody says to me is, why would you do a conference in Dublin, and what's the value of me coming?
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's the exclusivity. It's the fact that people will come out of their current existing model of just going to conferences around the block and expose themselves for the cultural experience, the relationship experience, and again, the opportunity to find deal flow and to connect globally. Because the world has expanded as we see, right? There's people from all around the world that are raising capital or deploying capital, whatever it's going to be. And by having access to different environments gives you that one up on your competition. Because some people are so focused on what's happening in the United States, but if you look at it from the outside, there's so many people abroad that are looking at United States real estate opportunities because our interest rate is more favorable, our currency is more stable, the yields are more productive, and things like that, that they are actually looking at more opportunities in U.S. than they're looking at in Europe or UAE or wherever it's going to be. So to be in front of that capital, it's just a matter of you have to have the insight to realize that you need to diversify where you're actually going. And that's kind of the reason that we mix up our events, domestic and global. We've been all over Europe and Latin America and Canada, obviously the United States, but it's just a matter of diversification.
And I like that you ask questions to the people going to your conference too, because that's another key important point. You want someone who's going to vet the people coming, because that's going to affect the quality of the conference overall. So I'm happy to hear that you do that. Hopefully when people are evaluating, they look out for those sorts of characteristics too. Are there any key questions that people ask you when they're evaluating Jaboy?
Well, that's the good thing. I like questions, right? The people that are just calling or emailing and expect just they're going to get registered and not ask a question, I have to question their integrity of what their purpose is. So we have this thing, it's called Jaboy Verified. And Jaboy Verified has kind of been a game changer for a lot of the conference attendees. And what that strictly means is that we ask the questions, and a lot of people actually find out about that process and they call us and they ask us, tell me about Jaboy Verified. What does that mean? What do you need from me? That's what I want to hear. Because when somebody opens up and is asking me really what I want to know about them, means that they're actually looking to provide some transparency of what they're doing. On the
Mm,
other side, Jaboy Verified allows me to identify those people that just really don't understand that they're disguising themselves as an attendee when they're on the sell side. And there's a couple things that we actually look for when they ask us is who are the presenters going to be at our conference? Who are the sponsors going to be at the conference? You meaning, are they going to be any luxury sponsors, sponsors related to things of people like watches and people like travel experiences, things like that. They like to know exactly how are they going to get there. So things like that means that they're really trying to identify if the value is there. And therefore, we're able to align ourselves between Jaboy and the conference attendee to make sure it's a right fit.
Hi, I want to interrupt for a quick second because I am a big believer in emulating off of who you want to be. And I've gone through Christopher's program at Wealth Ops where he truly gives you the education you need to help you manage wealth like a microfamily office. I encourage you to take a second to read his article or visit his website at wealthops.io that will be linked as well. Okay, thanks. Back to it.
That's great. And now that we've kind of done the pre-conference work, let's shift to when you actually go to the conference. So, how can people make the most out of their networking opportunities when they're actually at the event?
That's a great question. So I see it all too often that people come to conferences and they just stand in the back. The whole
Yeah.
idea with the conference is whether or not you're a sponsor or an attendee is really to be engaging. And the way you engage is you need to talk to people, whether or not it's just say hello, shake your hand, or whatever it's going to be. But the most important thing is to really engage because too many times people just go and they spend way too much time talking to one person at a conference. And
Mm,
what I mean is that I learned this a long time ago when I started networking. There's a little bit of an art and a science to networking and meeting and building relationships. And that is when you first go and you're in a room that's of new people, you have to make your interactions quick. And what I
hmm
mean there is that a quick handshake, get to know their name, find out a little bit about what they do and who they are, a little bit about maybe their background, maybe even connect with them on LinkedIn. I know hard, right now to change, business cards, but LinkedIn is a very effective way to connect and really just kind of get a little bit of something that's going to be memorable with each other. Whether or not
Yep.
it's you say something to them that's funny or they said something to you that's funny that you're going to remember. So when you re engage with them, you can bring that up. It's a great way to engage. But the most important thing is, I see too many people, they come to a conference and they spend the whole, let's say the reception is an hour. They spend the
hmm
whole hour talking to one person. And then I
Right.
ask them the next day, how did it go? They're like, well, I didn't meet anybody. And I say, well, I saw you speaking to one person the whole night. And that's a purpose of or something that you just came, you got stuck talking to that one person. In some cases, it's an old friend. So where's the value there? So the whole idea is you need to really be quick about it. You need to
Yeah.
be engaging and tell a story. I mean, I think that most people that know me, I love to tell stories. So tell a story. Come up with a unique story. So everybody you meet, tell them a story. Whether or not it's, hey, listen, last week I was in Miami Beach and I got to see the biggest wave. And you know what? Something like that is going to resonate with those people when you re-engage with them, and you obviously it's a great icebreaker, but it's an opportunity to create something that's going to differentiate yourself out of the rest of the attendees. So
Right.
networking is more of an art and a science than just going to a conference and standing in the room. And again, it really bugs me when a lot of people call and they're like, are you going to have, 10,000 people at your conference? And it's like, well, what would you do at a conference with 1,000, 10,000 people? And a lot of people feel as though the more people, the better chances that they'll have to meet people.
Mm,
And I disagree with that philosophy, given the fact
Yeah.
that how do you reconnect with 10,000 people or even
Yeah.
1,000 people? How do you get to know who's realistically an investor or a sponsor that's going to be worthy of your time? And, mostly is that you're overwhelmed. Like I said,
Right.
talking to that one person with so many people, you're not able to stand out in the crowd. You're literally just there amongst the people, but people think in a lot of cases that going to these bigger conferences are just because they're industry conferences, bigger conferences, that's going to be the way they got to go. And
Right. It should be
I go to them
quality
some
over quantity.
exactly. And I go to a lot of these conferences myself, because again, being in financial services, and most of them have turned into job fairs where people are out there going because they're looking for other jobs. So the
Oh, interesting.
attendance swells. A lot of these sponsors or conference organizers, they don't have a total capacity for how many attendees at a firm can bring. Meaning that,
Mm-hmm.
you can be a brokerage firm and you can bring 15 attendees. Well, you can swell your attendee count, but those 15 people may not actually be the decision makers. So
Sure.
you really have to look at the caliber of the attendee, and going back to the quality over the quantity, we don't look
Mm-hmm.
at that. I'd rather be more boutique, leaner, meaner, and ability to make those connections by people that ultimately are knowing that when they talk to somebody, that
Mm-hmm.
person is going to have the same caliber of intelligence as and they can make a relationship and Again, not everything always works out, but if you plant the right seeds, your ability to create the right development will happen for sure.
Right. And you can be more intentional that way. And I know when I've gone to conferences, people have creative ways of staying in touch. So I know business cards are kind of a thing of the past. Now you can like bump your phones, or people have QR codes with their social media links or email or contact and phone. So that's another thing that I would encourage people to make for themselves. I think that's a super easy way to quickly transfer information. And as silly as it sounds, sometimes when you get back to your seat or whenever you have a second, just take little notes on who you just met, because that will help. When you're at a conference, you're meeting a lot of people. Sometimes it's hard to keep people straight, but I do think it's important to remember, if you have those little moments with someone where you are standing out in a way, being able to refer back to that conversation will leave you even more powerful. One thing that is a little bit hard for me sometimes is exiting a conversation. So, to your point, I agree. How can you meet a lot of different people, but not have that one conversation drag out too long? So, would you have any tips for how to politely leave a conversation?
It's pretty simple. It's kind of a way that I've created, and again, the way I do it. Again, when I'm the host of a conference, I've got sometimes 100 plus attendees that I've never met before that want to spend time with me, and I love to engage with as many as I can. But again, it's just a matter of pivoting. Like I said, shaking the hand, getting the information. I love to, and again, I think that we one of the first groups that created the name tag with the QR code. When COVID
Mm,
happened, I remember people didn't want to exchange or touch a lot of things. We created the opportunity to have the QR code on our name tag, and we still do that, which is invaluable. But when you do the introduction, when you scan the tag, there's a column, at least in ours, that allows you to take a note. And I would just in that note
mm,
category put something like lives in Miami, or when we talk briefly about he loves Mexican food, something that remembers the conversation, and then you
right.
can archive it so both of you can kind of see that. But again, it's just the interaction is being polite, whether or not it's, hey, I see Bill or I see somebody else I'd like to go say hello to and politely leave. Or in some cases, what I've done, which is also very fun, is, hey, let's go over here and say hello to this gentleman or to this individual, whatever it's going to be. And there it gives you an opportunity for you to not only introduce yourself to somebody else, but introduce the person you're talking to with somebody else as well. So it kind of engages in that
Yep,
whole conversation. It should obviously from there be able to multiply where now people feel comfortable that they know other people in the room. And again, it's kind of like blocking and tackling. You got to be able to
yeah,
move and pivot. But again, it's just a matter of taking as little time as you can, but getting as much of an impact on that person when you meet them. And it's all about telling a story or getting a story or getting something that's different about the person. Maybe the person wears a very unique jacket or they're
sure,
a designer, clothing freak, whatever it's going to be. Just take notes like that. I mean, they're
right.
really invaluable when it comes to the relationship, not only to open the door, but again, ongoing.
Right. And then on the other side of that, if you're someone who's going to a conference for the very first time, you don't know a soul there, what's a good way to approach someone? Do you just walk up to a random group of people and introduce yourself, or do you have any advice for someone like that?
Yeah, I mean, again, a little bit more about what I said earlier. It's yes, don't be the guy that's just standing at a high boy table with your arms crossed and waiting for people to come to you. It typically doesn't happen because people are in these rooms, they're excited to engage and to meet other people. My advice is to typically meet with potentially the organizer, which would be myself. Come up and introduce yourself if you recognize maybe a sponsor or somebody like that in the room. But yeah, don't be afraid because the whole idea of going to a conference is to meet new people, to find new ideas, and to be inspired. And sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I grew up as a very, very shy individual. I was afraid to talk to anybody. And I started going to conferences and well, if I stand in the back of the room, that's not going to help my shyness. So I just threw myself at it. I was like, I need to get up there and I need to talk to people. I actually
Right.
volunteered back in the day to speak on panels. I volunteered myself to help the conference organizer, just ways that I can meet people and engage. So you have to kind of be creative, but Standing in back of the room is ultimately just going to be a detriment to your development in really building those relationships, especially if you're a sponsor. I've seen it all too many times. I've had sponsors that pay a lot of money to be at a conference, and they just stand in the back of the room and they wait for people to come to them. And that's a major no-no, right? It's like, I hate to see that. And it's obviously something I like to go up to those sponsors and bring them into the conversation. But it's just a matter of, sometimes it's great to have an icebreaker where, other people can bring you into the conversation, but don't be afraid to get in the midst of the crowd. Everyone is there for the same purpose, right? Everyone's there to meet new people and see who's in the room. So that person who may be shy or nervous about talking to people, the other person is just as shy or nervous, but they're just taking that foot forward and getting in front of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's that reframing and reminding yourself that everyone's there to do the same thing, and the more that you do it, the easier it will become.
Exactly.
I know earlier you mentioned that people come back to you upset because they didn't make a lot of connections, but besides that, has anyone shared any stories around why they were upset with how a conference went for them?
I haven't luckily had that. We've had people that have not been able to make a conference, maybe a flight delay or something like that. Typically and thankfully, people come to the conference, they have the right intentions or purpose. They walk away inspired, and they walk away either with a deal flow opportunity or a new relationship. I've already had calls leading up into our Dallas event that we're doing this week. The people just met at one of our conferences recently that are now like besties. It's kind of fun, right?
That's
Where
awesome.
they're all of a sudden now they're traveling into Dallas to come to this event, and they can't wait for our next event. Those are the things I like to hear. But thankfully, like you said, on the negative side, I've been blessed with, we take a different approach. We want
Right.
to make sure everyone's happy. If something at the conference, let's say they don't like, the food selection, or they have a certain dietary restriction, we do our best to accommodate things like that. We can, obviously some people, ask for vegetarian meals and things like that, but those are more logistical than anything of a major complaint.
Sure. Has anyone said anything about other conferences they've attended, maybe about their bad experiences there?
So, I don't really like to talk negative a lot of conferences, but there's a lot of events going on. There's
Sure.
one event recently that popped up, and it's a group that they're doing these events, and they're rolling in airplanes, or they're going to
Oh, well.
airplane hangars and things like that. And people are curious about the event, but they've done it a couple times now, I think 2 or 3 times. And I know the individual that's involved, and it comes from a different background, not really in the financial side, but people joke about it when they go, and they're like, they expect to be high net worth individuals, but yet they're serving a buffet out of a tinfoil tray with paper plates and plastic utensils. Like, it's kind of comical.
Right.
And they're talking about the individual that talking about the event is making it as though they interview everybody and they're going to have only family offices. I just talked to 3 people that went after I told them that it was probably going to be a waste of their time. But, and they said the same thing. They're like, Neil, they're like, these people were there. They're all selling something. There was no family offices there. The jets
Man.
that were there were not people flying in. It's a hangar. They're naturally going to be jets in a hangar.
Yeah.
So to create that environment that people are flying in to be at the event, to me, is just creating, again, that misnomer that high net worth people and people that own planes and things like that are going to be at these events. And it's unfortunate because, like you said, there's a lot of advisors that are looking for good quality conferences.
Yeah.
And those things just really are a distraction and more of a waste of time and money for a lot of people. So I don't like to see that stuff because, like I said,
Right.
there's a lot of people that don't look at the integrity of what the
Mhm.
event really should be. They look at it as, okay, I'm going to bring a bunch of people together. It's going to be something fun. Well, fun is great if you throw in a birthday party or a wedding or something like that. But fun shouldn't be about doing an event. There needs to be, or a financial event. It should be with a purpose. And the
Mhm.
purpose should be, at the end of the day, to raise capital, make connections, and ultimately increase your knowledge of what's happening in the world.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's the secret sauce to going to a good conference.
Yeah, it might be hard to kind of see through all of that at the beginning because you do get entranced by the nice planes and all that. But maybe just like you said, like really trying to dig through that noise and look at the actual heart of the event and say, okay, if this plane wasn't here, is this conference going to get me the information that I need? So that's a good tip too and a red flag to maybe look out for. In some of these bigger conferences, there's a lot of different sessions that you can attend. How would you help someone navigate into choosing the right sessions?
Right. So there are different conferences that do breakouts and they do even speed dating to meet individuals. Our platform has always been general session. I've gone to conferences where they make you make a decision if you want to be in room A or B. I would say that if you're going to have to break up and make a decision, you take advantage of something that is going to inspire you. Not because your friend is going to that room, because it's going to inspire them. You need to take a look at the content and also take a look at the speakers. I've been to a lot of conferences where the speakers really don't represent what the conference breakout is all about.
Hmm.
And that's another big point. I've been to all too many conferences that you look at the actual caliber of the panel or the discussion, and you realize that they're all competitors, meaning of the same nature. And they're all basically telling the same story and basically pounding themselves on the back saying that they're number one in whatever that particular asset class is going to be. And to
Mm.
me, that's distracting. I used to go to conferences back in the day, and like I said, you have four sponsors up on the panel. They're all basically saying, yeah, we're number one in the asset class and multifamily. The next speaker we get up, and we're number one in multifamily, and you just walk away dizzy. So I think that it's important to do a little research prior to getting into that conference to really be most effective and see if these people are actually valuable, to see who the speakers are. Because, excuse me, in a lot of these conferences, they struggle to get really good quality speakers.
Hmm.
And in that case, they just fill a spot to fill a spot. And it may not be anybody that's relevant to be in that room to speak to the
Yep.
audience. So again, it's just a little bit of research. What we try to do over at my group is, provide prior to an event the bios of the speakers, the agenda of who's actually going to be there. And people
Hmm.
do look at it because I get so many comments of people like, wow, I can't believe you got this person to speak, or, the economic impact of having a CBRE there to give advice on where the markets are going globally in the real estate side,
Yeah.
things like that inspire people.
Right.
So, again, it's just making sure you're actually spending your time wisely. And again, like it said, you can do that by reading the bios and finding out a little bit of research beforehand.
I like that. Yeah, making sure that you take the extra time, go the extra mile to do a little bit of homework before you go will make you more productive when you're at the conference, whether it's assessing who's speaking or maybe assessing who's attending and seeing top 5 people that you want to make sure that you get in front of. So now that we've gone pre-conference, in the conference, so let's dig into post-conference. What have you seen is the most effective way to follow up with someone? Because sometimes emails can get lost, LinkedIn messages can get lost. I know you can maybe try to make the message personal, but outside of those two modes, is there really any other way to follow up with someone?
Okay. I think the best way, and again, like I said, like even this week, we have people that are coming into Dallas that they met at our conference just recently in Vail, Colorado in November. They met, they've had since November, they've had lunches together, they've had dinners together. They actually even traveled to Los Angeles together. And a couple of them have kind of created this little group. At this point now, they're actually coming and they're doing events together. They're going again, they're coming to Dallas together. They didn't know each other 3 months ago. Now they're coming to my conference in Dallas together because they basically created this little group. They followed up, they engaged at the conference. I think that that's a really meaningful way to do it. What a lot of our conference attendees do, and I actually encourage it, is to start a WhatsApp group. And a
Mm.
WhatsApp group is really cool. And you can do that yourself or maybe have somebody that that's taking WhatsApp phone numbers. But think about this: is that you meet somebody, you get their WhatsApp number, you put it in your phone, you create a group chat. And that group chat is Jaboy Productions in Dublin, Ireland. That is now your basis for having all those people there. And now you can create a follow-up chain. Hey, listen, I'm going to Neil's next conference here. Or, why don't we grab dinner? Or simply, it's my birthday next week. Who'd like to join me?
Yep.
And I also really do, because I in a lot of cases, I create these group chats, is I love to share photos. If I'm in a different city after we just left the conference in, Colorado, share a photo of where you are now in Europe or whatever. So people know a little bit about you. And it really does break the ice. And think about it. Now you have, in some cases in this group chat, more people that are at that conference that you now have like friendships and you're actually telling each other where you're at. So I would say the most efficient way to do it is to create those group chats in WhatsApp. And I think you'd be really surprised in the things that you'll find out, the things that you'll engage in going forward when you meet somebody.
Right. That's a very new and creative way to stay in touch with people. So I haven't really heard that one before. But all right, thank you, Neil. We're going to end with a quick fire round of questions. The first one is something that I know we both enjoy, food. So what would you say is your favorite restaurant?
Oh, wow. So my favorite restaurant, I love, believe it or not, Nobu. I'm a sucker
Mm.
for a great sushi. I have made it a thing of wherever I travel, I love to go to Nobu. I just got back from Munich, Germany, and I was inspired to find out that they actually had a Matsuisha, which is owned by Nobu, in
Oh,
the
wow.
hotel. So, Nobu, his first name is Nobu, his last name is Matsuisha. So he's got some
Okay.
Matsuisha. I know you live out there in Colorado from time to time. They have Matsuisha in Aspen and they have it in Vail as well. I think that I've been to a majority of the Nobus around the world. And I think that to me is like a fun thing. Is it the best sushi in the world? It's probably comparable to being, but it is definitely one of my favorite spots to go.
Yeah, how do they compare across the different states and countries? Are they pretty consistent?
That's the great thing. Yes, it's
Yeah.
very, very consistent. I love they have this thing called the black miso cod. And I've had black
Oh,
miso
yes.
cod all over the world, and it's pretty consistent. Sometimes maybe it's a little smaller than others and things like that, but the actual taste is pretty much comparable no matter where you're at. Whether or not you're in London or Miami, the Nobu black cod miso is fantastic. And the same as the sushi rolls. The one thing I
Yep.
love about Nobu, you're going to get a nice size piece of sushi
There you
compared to
go.
a lot of places where,
Mm-hmm.
they may be less expensive and they're sacrificing on the quality of the fish. Nobu does not do that. The fish quality is always going to be the freshest. The size of the rolls and the pieces that you're going to get, to me, are really consistent as well.
Yeah, there's a reason why Nobu's so popular and has a lot of locations, so I'm sure a lot of people would agree with you. Second question is the way that you stay up to date on the news.
Yeah. So I am very in tune with things like CNN, and I use obviously most digitally. I use CNN.com.
Mm,
I also follow the DI Wire. For those of you that don't know, the DI Wire is an alternative investment news source that you can
mm,
use to get a daily feed of what's happening on the alternative investment side. I follow the local news for Dallas because I live here now, the Dallas Daily News. And sometimes from time to time, I'll look at things like the Wall Street Journal and other periodicals. But again, it's all digital. I skim through
yeah.
that stuff in the morning and kind of keep up to what the current events are, again, locally and abroad.
Right, yeah, there's certainly a lot of different news sources out there, so you have to kind of just find out what works for you.
Right.
Last question. If you had $100,000 that just came out of that printer behind you, what would you invest it in? And it can't be your own company.
Right. I think right now what's happening in the growth and development in AI is fantastic.
Mm,
If I was to deploy any money, obviously people have been investing in real estate for a long time, and that's a great asset class. But if you want to be up to date, something with a little bit more sizzle, obviously AI, it's definitely not as stable as real estate. I mean, we saw just yesterday there was a new competitor that came out on the AI side, and that created havoc on the stock market and a couple other stocks that are affiliated in the
Yep.
AI sector. We look at NVIDIA and things like that. So you need to be able to stomach it. But I think that if you look at the future, there's a bright future for artificial intelligence. I had
Right.
somebody on a Zoom yesterday that actually they told me that you can ask this particular program anything, give it a little bit of details, and it'll put out an output of really the expectations of what could happen. So, for example, like you just asked me, what do you think is going to be the future investment opportunity? You can kind of put that into this system, and it would kind of, from my response, come up with a report saying that this person would probably most likely invest in AI. They would invest in this kind of AI, and maybe down the road, they have a significant chance of growth opportunity and investment gain. You know, things like that are pretty inspiring. I need to look further into that. I have not yet gotten into this ChatGPT and all these other artificial intelligence things to write scripts and write marketing materials and things like that. But I'm probably just here sitting and watching it all go by. But yes, there's a lot of change in AI. So if I would invest, it would definitely be something in that sector.
Yeah, I've recently come across a lot of podcasts and things that have been comparing AI to electricity. So electricity came into the home, and now you have all of these other products that came from it. Like a fridge, now you can have an oven, you can have light in your home. And so I feel like I agree with that. AI is just the start of this, and now other things can come from it. And so to your point, it's hard to know exactly what will stick, but that's the fun part.
Right. Hey, listen, down the road, we may be doing these Zooms with robots, so you never know.
Exactly. We'll see what happens in 20 years. But Neil,
Exactly.
thank you so much for your time. I hope people feel more confident when they're evaluating a conference, when they're at the conference, and then post-conference. So if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, the best way is you can obviously always check my website for upcoming events and things like that, which is jabboyproductions.com. If you'd like to reach out to me for more information, you can reach me at Neil, which is Neil, at jabboyproductions.com.
Perfect. All right. Until next time. Adios.
All right. Thank you, Bella. Appreciate it.
If you are ever interested in a recap with the main points discussed throughout the podcast episode, check out the Q&A series because we dig deeper into the concepts discussed, and you can follow along on YouTube if that's preferred. If you find any value in this show and want to support it, it would be awesome if you texted someone right now about it. You can say you have a podcast recommendation that you think they should listen to, and then ask them to get back to you with their thoughts. Anything helps, and I really rely on the amazing investors like you to spread the word. Thank you so much for listening, and please feel free to reach out at any time.